Hello everyone and welcome to round 6 of the Gibraltar Masters 2020. It's young Praggnanandhaa versus Veselin Topalov and it's quite the game. Now the Tata still has ended, so we're only joining into the Gibraltar Chess Festival in round 6, but I will go through your hashtag suggestions. If any of you suggested any nice games from the previous rounds, I will also try to cover as many of them. Now this game was suggested to me a lot. Like it's like I woke up in the morning, I opened the door and there was like a little note. It said, dude, cover Prague's game. It didn't happen like that, but I just wanted to illustrate how much you guys suggested it, and of course, as always, for very good reasons. Now it features the French defense. Again, it's not the only reason I'm showing this, but it is one of the reasons, of course, as always. Now, the two nice photos to the left of Prague and Topalov are courtesy of Niki Riga, official photographer of the Gibraltar Masters 2020. So we get to enjoy those as well. Now, without further ado, let's check out the game. Prague opens with e4. We have e6 by Topalov, so the French defense. We have d4, d5, and knight to c3. We have knight to f6, and now e5, attacking the knight, knight f to d7, and now f4, strengthening the center as c5, of course, is coming. So c5, attacking the d4 pawn, knight f3, developing while defending, bishop to e7, and now bishop to e3 by Prague. We have b6 by Topalov, and now queen to d2. We have knight to c6. Most often you will see castles here, but Topalov goes for a bit of a different move order. We have knight to c6, bishop to e2, and only now Topalov castles. We have castles by Prague, and here the general theory of today is that f5 and bishop to b7 are the seemingly best moves here, but Topalov goes for c captures on d4, which is a much rarer line. And okay, Prague has to recapture, knight captures on d4, we have knight captures, bishop captures, and here knight back to b8. Now that the knight is no longer useful here, you can shift it over to c6. We have knight back to b8 by Topalov, and now in expectance of knight to c6, Prague goes back, bishop back to f2. And here, there is one game where knight to c6 was played, but here Topalov instead goes for bishop to a6. And it's, I haven't seen an interview after the game. I'm pretty sure an interview was given. So if any of you have seen it, do shed some light on the whole matter. I don't know who was prepared up until what point, but it's already things are becoming very interesting here. So here Prague says, okay, I'm going to trade. Bishop captures, knight captures, and then now f5. This is a pretty common breakthrough against the French defense, this f5 move. And now Topalov decides to break the tension with e captures on f5, which is a bit odd. You could go for knight to c7, which strengthens the d5 pawn. Now you are actually threatening to capture this, but Topalov says, nope, it's okay to do it right away. And okay, we have knight captures on d5 by Prague, and now, again, Topalov could continue simply developing with rook to e8, but he goes for this tricky knight to b4 move. Which is tricky, of course. You cannot capture because the queen would be hanging on d2, and of course you cannot capture with the queen because the bishop guards the knight. So here Prague just defends the knight on d5. We have c4, and now rook to c8, putting pressure on the c4 pawn, and now a3, pushing the knight back. We have knight back to c6, now attacking the e5 pawn, and Prague defends it, rook f to e1. And here Topalov went for bishop to c5 to offer a trade of bishops this way. He could also play bishop to h4, just go after the trade, via the king side, and then after g3, bishop g5 pushes back the queen. Also a possibility, but Topalov decided for bishop to c5, and he allows Prague with this very nice expansion with b4. And okay, we have bishop captures, queen captures, now pressuring the f5 pawn, and now queen d7 defending. And now shifting the queen over to the king side with queen to h4. And already you can see that black is beginning to feel the pressure. Not much you can do with your rooks, the knight really not doing all that great. This knight is a monster here on d5. There are already ideas of a rook lift coming in with some nice attack. So here Topalov has to really decide what to do. Best for Topalov is something like king to h8, and after king h8 now you will get rook a d1, then queen to e6 getting out of the way, and after knight to f4 attacking the queen, now queen e7. But if you go into this, then you will allow the rook to go for this very nice rook lift. The knight is under attack and the pawn. However, there is a rook captures on c4, rook captures, and rook captures here. And you get this position where the material is equal, but white does have the 2 against 1 on the queen side, which it's hard to say. Probably black can hold this, but Topalov doesn't like it. He's not that kind of a player. So instead, after queen to h4, Topalov plays queen to d8. He offers a queen trade, but this loses terribly. So feel free to pause the video and try to find why this loses terribly while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding a move that really destroys black. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to f6 check. And now this isn't an offer, you have to accept it, because if you move the king, queen captures on h7 is just mate, so that's not possible. Topalov captured the knight, and now Praggu goes for not e captures on f6. That's a bad idea. You don't have queen g5 check followed by mate because of queen to d4 check, forcing a queen trade. So this would be actually just throwing away the game after you've sacrificed a piece for a winning game. So after knight to f6 check, g captures on f6, we have first rook a to d1, not allowing queen to d4. And now Topalov has to decide, can I move the queen? Can I play something else? A problem is if you move the queen, and there really aren't all that many squares where you can do so. Queen to c7, now you get e captures on f6 with the threat of mate. So king to h8, now getting ready to bring the rook over to g8, but now rook d3. And here it's amazing, but everything wins for white. There's the simple threat of just, well, getting checkmated. Also, queen to h6 followed by queen g7 mate is still an idea. So you could try rook c8, going for this rook captures on e1, but just rook captures, and queen to h6 is sufficient. And now there's not much you can do here. If rook to g8, then just rook to h3, again, completely winning. If you decide to go for check king f2, and the next move, whatever black plays, it's checkmate. Well, unless you want to start throwing away pieces, but you are getting checkmated. So after rook a to d1, Topalov says, okay, I don't have a move here, I'm gonna play knight captures on e5 and give up my queen, at least to try and survive the attack. So rook captures on d8, of course Praggu accepts the queen sacrifice, rook captures on f8, and now queen captures on f6. Threatening the knight here, knight to g6, and now h4. You are threatening, of course, h5, h6, and queen g7 mate, so Topalov has to prevent this. We have h5, and now rook to f1. Preparing to win the pawn here, put pressure on f7, so f4, and now once again feel free to pause the video and try to find the quickest way to victory while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding such a beautiful breakthrough, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's g4. And here, again, the threat is the same. Captures on h5, h6, queen g7 mate. So you could try to eliminate the pawn. If you eliminate it with this pawn, then just h5, and it's pretty much the same thing. If you try to gain some sort of a perpetual here, it doesn't really work. You can just capture the knight, and now it's not a problem. Rook g3 check, king f2, rook f3 check, you're gonna move, and yes, you will have to survive a few checks, but after that, not much you can do here. This is a threat, so let's say rook f8. But now captures, and you have a queen against the rook. Of course, this is completely winning. So after g4, you could try f captures on g3 en passant. But then you just get queen captures on f7 with check, king h8, and queen captures on g6. Again, this is game over. So here after g4, Topalov tried the immediate rook to d3, but now we have g captures on h5, we have rook to g3 check, now comes king f2, and now again, Topalov could try to save the knight with something like knight to f8, but it will just be pointless. Rook e1 followed by rook to e7 is coming, and you don't, again, have all that many moves. Let's say rook captures on c4, You can try to check the white king for a little bit, but still rook e7, and it's not hard to calculate that the king will be able to escape king f1. If rook c1 check, you just go king e2, rook g2 check, and now you start marching the king up the board. Rook d1 check, you're gonna go king c4, rook c2 check, you're gonna go king b5, rook d5, and now finally king a6, and that's all there is for the black rooks. And next is the game over, just queen captures on f7. So after this king f2 move, Topalov says, okay, no point in trying to save the knight, let's just go for knight captures on h4. And now, what do you do here? Again, it's not enough that you have this rook to g2 check. Even if h6 is played, it's perfectly enough. But Praggu says, okay, I'm just gonna capture the knight now. All I have to do is basically trade off one of the rooks, and then it's pointless for black to continue. So Topalov plays rook captures on c4. And here, Praggu played rook to e1, and it was in this position on move 33 that Veselin Topalov resigned the game, and a brilliant 33 move victory against the French defense by young Praggnanandhaa. There's really nothing to do here. You can give one check, and then after rook e2, that's pretty much all there is. If you trade, you are a rook against the queen. If you go back, still just the queen captures here, attacks the rook goes back, and still rook to e7. There's nothing to do here. h6 is coming. There's constant pressure on f7, and well, it's just a pointless game for black. But okay, after rook to e1, Topalov resigned, and like I said, a brilliant victory by young Praggnanandhaa. And it's amazing how a player like Topalov, it's probably because he's a player like Topalov himself, that he just since he's so tactically aware, that he just doesn't think that he can get himself in a position where a move like knight to f6 will be possible. After his queen to d8 move, he just doesn't think that this works against him, because he's the wizard, he's the attacker, he's the one that creates stuff. It's easy to, you know, I think you're impervious to you know, such tactics, and just knight f6 wins the game. It's incredible stuff, but it happens. So yeah, after round 6, Praggu is currently 7th with 5 out of 6 points. That's pretty amazing stuff. Only one player on 5.5 out of 6. That's Andrei Esipenko. So like I said, I will be checking out on your hashtag suggestions to see some of the games from previous rounds. I've heard Mamedyarov had a very nice game, and some other players also had some pretty good games. So I will check that out. And yeah, also wanted to mention, it's never easy playing the French defense. It's much easier to attack the French than defending with the French. But there is one excellent game where the French defense was played. If you haven't seen the game, do check it out. I will put a link to it in the description below. It will be the first thing you will see. Vladimir Kovacevic defeated Bobby Fischer with the French defense. So if you still haven't seen that game, do check it out. It's really just a masterclass. And it's in the period where Bobby just didn't lose any games. So prior to the, I believe, Palma de Mallorca Interzonal, and prior to the candidates matches. So it was really Bobby in his prime. So really just amazing stuff. The first thing you will see in the description below. But yeah, I would like to thank Frank Holmes, Johannes Froker Janssen, Eric Fredericks, Sanjay Kittur, and chessatlas.net for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check all my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing the coverage of the Gibraltar Chess Masters. I'm pretty sure it was called Gibraltar Tradewise Festival at some point, but I guess they change it. They change everything to Masters these days. So yeah, continue to check up on your wonderful suggestions, and of course we are continuing the Paul Morphy saga. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Monday.